In 1988, the people of Hwasong, South Korea, lived in constant fear. This fear grew even stronger on the morning of September 17, when yet another incident occurred. That morning, a 14-year-old girl, Park San-hee, was found murdered in her own bed, inside her own home. She had first been raped and then strangled. Park San-hee was not the first victim, nor the last. She was the 8th. Even though her parents were sleeping in the next room, the killer managed to murder her and escape without making a sound. I think you'll find this video interesting. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe. So, turn on the universe mode in your brain, because out here in the universe, nothing will interrupt you while you watch this video. Hwasong is one of South Korea's important cities. Located near Seoul, in Gyeonggi Province, it is known for its industry, agriculture, and historical landmarks. The city is home to Hyundai and Kia automobile plants, making it a vital hub for Korea's industry. Hwasong is also famous for tourism, since it has the UNESCO-listed Hwasong Fortress. The fortress, built in the 18th century by King Jeongjo, showcases the military architecture of the Joseon dynasty. The city also has royal tombs, coastal areas, and resorts. With nearly 1 million residents, Hwasong plays a big role in Korea's economy and cultural heritage. But if you could travel back 30 years in this very city, you would face true horrors. There was a serial killer nobody knew. No one could tell when or where he would strike. Let's start from the very beginning, back in the quiet days before the killer appeared. September 15, 1986, the streets were as peaceful as always, people were returning home from work. 71-year-old Lee Won-im was walking home from visiting her daughter. On her way back, she walked along the quiet village roads of Anyangong. At night, those streets were usually empty. That's where the elderly woman was attacked. 4 days later, her body was found in a rice paddy not far from her home. She had been raped and strangled. As you can tell, the killer was a true maniac. This was only the first victim, and he left behind no trace. This shocking crime in a simple village caused an uproar. But before that uproar even calmed down, another case happened. On October 20th, 25-year-old Park Yoon-suk got off a bus around 10 p.m. She headed home down a dark road, and then disappeared. Her body was found on October 23rd in a canal. The method was the same as before, she had been raped and strangled. That meant 2 murders within a single month. The bodies were found only 15 minutes apart from each other. Both had been raped, both killed in the same way. The bodies weren't hidden, they were dumped near the attack site. Even so, evidence was scarce. This time semen was found, but in the 1980s DNA analysis was nothing like today. All they could say was, yes, this is proof, and that was it. 2 months later, another terrifying crime happened. On December 12, 25-year-old housewife Kwon Young-bong disappeared from her neighborhood. The area was the same place where the first victim had been killed. For 4 months there was no trace of her body. But when it was found, everything was exactly like the previous cases. Her mouth had been stuffed with her own socks, and her underwear was thrown over her face. Bodily fluids were found on her as well. Just 2 days after Young-bong went missing, on December 14, 23-year-old Lee Kai-suk was returning from the city by bus. She got off around 11 p.m. and headed home. But she too vanished. A week later, her body was found in a rice field. Her hands had been tied behind her back, and a belt was wrapped around her head. This terrified the entire city. In the outskirts of Hwasong, a serial killer was roaming. Women tried not to go home alone at night. Many people stopped walking down those streets altogether. Nobody knew who the next victim would be. Imagine the fear, knowing the next victim could be your sister, your mother, or your daughter. And then, one day, things got even worse. The killer raped and strangled a 14-year-old girl inside her own home, and left without anyone noticing. Now people realized they weren't safe no matter where they were. The police struggled to catch the killer. Residents of Hwasong started to believe the investigation was useless, and turned to shamanism. People began performing rituals, hoping to be freed from this curse. The police, trying to restore their reputation, began putting pressure on people, torturing innocent men in an attempt to find the killer. Rumors spread among the public. They said the murderer only attacked women wearing red on rainy days. The police even tested this theory by sending female officers dressed in red to walk down the streets. But the killer was much smarter than they expected. During the investigation, police checked more than 20,000 potential suspects. They spent huge amounts of time, but still had no results. Soon, they started doing strange things, dragging people into the station and beating them. Terrified men, even the mentally ill, it didn't matter who, were accused and told, "This is your crime." Just to close the case, they were ready to pin it on anyone. In the following years, 4 men who had been investigated by the police committed suicide. It's believed this happened because of the constant beatings, surveillance, and harassment they endured. While the police were busy chasing false suspects, the real killer walked free. Many things were mishandled. Many truths were covered up. On January 11, 1987, 19-year-old student Hong Jin-young was found dead in a rice field. She was last seen on January 9, getting off a bus around 9 p.m. Just like the others, Jin-young's hands were tied, her mouth stuffed with a sock. She was sexually assaulted, and then strangled with her own clothes. Superstition spread again among the people. Especially women, they stopped wearing red clothes, hoping it would protect them from attack. But the killer didn't care about such details. On May 2, 1987, 29-year-old Park In-joo disappeared while carrying an umbrella to her husband. A week later, her body was found on a hillside. She had been murdered in the exact same way as the earlier victims. Around that time, several sexual assaults were also reported in the area. The police noticed a pattern: the victims had underwear placed over their heads. But unlike the others, these women were not killed. Then, for several months, the killer vanished. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall, but the fear never left. He came back. This time, a 54-year-old woman fell victim. She too was murdered the same way. It was as if the killer was mocking the police, striking whenever he pleased, and vanishing again. But this murder moved the investigation forward. Someone on a bus had seen the killer, and thanks to their testimony, a composite sketch was drawn. The killer was described as being 20 to 25 years old, 165 to 170 centimeters tall, with a long, sharp nose and short hair. Another survivor remembered something unusual: the killer's hands were very soft. That might sound silly, but it was an important clue. Most men in the area did hard labor, and their hands were rough. Soft hands stood out. The sketches were posted everywhere. The killer himself surely saw them, because for an entire year, he didn't attack anyone. But then, everything started again. In September 1988, 14-year-old Haksun was brutally assaulted in her bedroom. But this case turned out to be a key turning point in the investigation. After 2 years of killings, police focused on one man, Yoon Sang-yo. Yoon Sang-yo was a 22-year-old local who lived in Hwaseom. He walked with a limp and worked in a small agricultural equipment repair shop. The police quickly targeted him. A single hair found at the crime scene was tested, and experts claimed it was a 40% match to Yoon Sang-yo. 40%, what does that even mean? Was that enough to accuse him of being the murderer? Still, he was held in custody for 3 days and interrogated. In the end, he confessed to killing the 14-year-old Haksun. According to his statement, that night he had gone out walking, saw a house with lights on, noticed the girl inside alone, and felt an urge to rape. So, he entered and attacked her. He was charged with murder. But this was just one of the 8 killings. The police tried to connect him to the others, but there was no evidence. In fact, while he was in custody, 2 more women were murdered. Clearly, Yoon Sang-yo was not the real killer. So who was? Regardless, Yoon was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. He appealed, saying the police had tortured him until he confessed. But at the time, his claims went nowhere. When he was imprisoned, people felt a bit more at ease. But about 2 years later, when another murder occurred, they returned to their old life of fear. Why had the killer been silent for 2 years? Believe it or not, during that time he had been arrested for theft, but after appealing to the court, he was released on probation. The police, sigh. At the end of 1993 and the beginning of 1994, another incident happened. In December, a man named Lee Chun-jae had an argument with his wife. She left him. Soon after, on January 13, he invited his wife's 18-year-old sister to his home, gave her drugs, raped her, and murdered her. According to the detective investigating the case, Lee killed the 18-year-old girl and then pretended to look for her on the streets together with his father-in-law. On January 18, Lee Chun-jae was arrested. By May, he was tried and sentenced to death. In 1995, the Supreme Court of South Korea reviewed the case and changed his sentence to life in prison. So, who was Lee Chun-jae? In one sentence, a real predator hiding under human skin. He was born on January 31, 1963, in Hwaseong. As a child, he was quiet and ordinary, but it's said he suffered from deep trauma. His younger sister drowned at a very young age. Some reports claim he was sexually abused in childhood, but little is known for certain. He graduated from middle school in 1983, then was drafted into South Korea's mandatory military service. He became a tank driver and was discharged in January 1986. After leaving the army, he returned home, and just 8 months later, the first Hwaseong murder happened. 33 years later, in 2019, the police announced that Lee Chun-jae had been identified as the suspect in the Hwaseong serial killings. Investigators had tested DNA found on one of the victims' underwear. It matched Lee's DNA. Later tests linked him to 4 more murders. At that time, Lee was already serving a life sentence in Busan prison for raping and murdering his wife's younger sister. At first, he denied any connection to the serial killings. But on October 2, 2019, the police announced that Lee had confessed to killing 15 people, 10 women in Hwaseong, including the 14-year-old girl whose murder had been pinned on someone else, plus 4 more victims. Beyond the murders, Lee also admitted to more than 30 rapes and attempted rapes. The man wrongfully convicted of killing the 8th victim, Yoon Sang-yo, had already served 20 years in prison before being released on parole in 2009. After hearing Lee's full confession, Yoon reopened his case to prove his innocence. In December 2020, the court officially acquitted him. In 2022, the South Korean government awarded him 2.5 billion won, about $2 million in compensation. After 30 years, he finally proved his innocence, but in the process, he lost most of his life behind bars. Support me by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. Help our family reach 1,000. Take care of yourself. Goodbye for now.